Welcome, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? Super happy to be here. Really excited about our guest tonight. We have a fantastic guest, somebody, an American First Patriot, who I first heard about when Cassie Clark had posted about him. And she's somebody who I trust. And she said that he is a great candidate for Senate in North Carolina, somebody who I've come to respect a great deal. And the first person I asked after that was Margot, a good friend of mine. And I asked her what she thought about him. And she said he's a great American patriot, somebody who really represents North Carolina well and would be a fantastic member of the U.S. Senate. So I knew what I had to do at that point. I was like, well, I have to try and host this guy. So he's an author, former Navy JAG officer, just really got a resume that really just stands out from the crowd and has some great accolades that come with him. So tonight, is a really tough night for a lot of people. We had two National Guard members that were shot in DC. So our prayers go out to them and their families. Really tough time. Really tough situation happening there. And thank God for, our troops trying to do the right thing, trying to secure our cities, and our prayers go out to them. As a military retiree, I just, it's just heartbreaking what happened today. So, but tonight we're going to promote Don Brown, and we're going to talk to him and see what he has to say. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up all my guests here tonight. So we got Lauren from Idaho, great American patriot, America First, promoting candidates from Idaho across the nation. Thank you for coming in here tonight. Land of Illusion from North Carolina. Margot from North Carolina. Appreciate you coming in here, Margot.
All
Cassie
my
Clark.
friends.
What's that?
All my friends.
Yeah, all your friends. How are you doing? And our great guest, Don Brown. Welcome to the stage, sir. How are you doing tonight?
Thank you. You've got me on with a lot of superstars tonight. No pressure there, huh?
Well,
Do the best we can.
yeah, well, I first learned about you. I saw Cassie Clark's post about you, and she's somebody who I've come to trust, somebody who I've come to know here on X. And I really value her opinion about what's going on in North Carolina, because she's somebody who's, really concerned for her state and also the USA. And so when I saw her post, I was like, I got to look into this guy. I got to look into, see who he is, what he's about. And I talked to Margot about you, and she said the same thing. She said, this is our guy. And then Land of Illusion too, she's on stage here with me. Another friend of mine, she's like, yeah, he's an amazing patriot, veteran, Navy JAG officer, author, just a resume that really just stands out from the crowd. And so, the problem is, we don't get a lot of help in pushing the right candidates. The swamp is it's entrenched, and they'll push the ones that they want or whatever, but those might not be the best candidates. Media doesn't give much help. And so what I've come to discover is we're going to have to push them ourselves. We're going to have to push you guys. Now, granted, you've been on news and stuff like that, and that's great. And you're an author too, so your name is out there. But the thing is like I feel obligated. I have 100,000 followers. I feel obligated to help out. I feel obligated because you guys are set behind, and that's not the way it should be. And so, I want to help out in any way that I can. So let's, tell us about yourself. Tell us what, kind of got you involved in this, and how what made you want to run for Senate.
Well, thanks. First off, one of my claims to fame is I'm a friend of Margot. And I've written a book, and I included a character in the book named Mac Williams, who's a real life character who her dad knew and her family knew. And it's amazing the way the Lord works sometimes. But I have been a JAG officer and have been involved in a number of, in some high profile types of cases. We battled alongside the Secretary of War now, Pete Hegseth. When Lieutenant Clint Lawrence had been prosecuted under Obama's rules of engagement, we're able, by the grace of God, to get that young man out of prison at Leavenworth. He'd been there for 6 years on a 20-year sentence. It was these military courts martial under Obama were in some ways a prelude. They were political trials that we will later see with the prosecutions against Trump. So got involved in that. Was involved also in writing the book and leading the investigation into the shoot down of a Chinook helicopter extortion 17 in Afghanistan in 2011. And got to know Pete Hegseth, Sean Hannity, and General Boykin and some folks who there, and intersected with some great Americans, including, General Mike Flynn, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. Got involved also in some, litigation involving the 2020 election fraud, and worked with Sidney Powell very closely and two other legal teams trying to salvage what clearly was something that stunk to the high heaven. Never we had a situation where 6 states closed down simultaneously, but Trump way off in the lead. And next thing you know, the vote fairy shows up. So I was involved with that battle, and also got involved in the medical freedom battle early on, fighting Fauci's unconstitutional and dangerous jabs and vax mandates and mask mandates, and got involved in some major litigation. Having said that, I was still not planning to run for the Senate. I did run for Congress a couple years ago, jumped in very late. Matter of fact, it was about this time of year that I jumped in really, really late with a really early primary that we have in North Carolina. This year it's March 3rd. That year I believe it was March 5th. But anyway, was not planning. This was not on my radar. But I think the straw that broke the camel's back in my situation was we have a senior senator named Thom Tillis who was battling the president on multiple fronts, including not only on policy, but the president's nominees. He did sink Ed Martin, but it was the Pete Hegseth nomination that really spurred my candidacy, I believe. Pete, as I say, I've worked with him closely, and he's a true American patriot. I believe he will be the best Secretary of Defense and now Secretary of War in the nation's history. We can see a no-nonsense approach already. Tillis had promised that he would support any of the president's nominees who came out of committee. Pete cleared the Armed Services Committee, yet Tillis tried to torpedo him anyway. And by the grace of God, Pete did get confirmed. We had to bring the vice president in, but that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Tillis dropped out of the race. And as we moved into the summer, I had one of their opponents, a really strong patriot named Andy Nilsson. We were both interviewed, what are we going to do now? And I made the comment that if Laura Trump had jumped in, I would have gone to the beach. The closest I've been to the beach is speaking to the Carteret County Republican Party. We're driving along the Sound, so we're still in the race, and we're in the race to win it. I don't believe that that you can have top-down candidates ram down people's throats and be successful. I mean, we've seen that situation with the RNC in 2016 when they tried to ram Jeb Bush down our throats. We saw it with the Democrat National Committee and Joe Biden just this last election cycle when they tried to ram Kamala down our throats. And now we're seeing the RNC trying to do the same thing with my opponent here in North Carolina. It's not going to work. So we're here to win, not just to take the primary, but also to win a general election. And we believe in God, country, and the Constitution, and we're going to continue to fight, and we won't stop fighting. The Lord calls us home.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing that, because you obviously don't have to do it. It's a tough row to hoe, and it's you're as somebody who stands for the people, it's really an uphill battle. And so I just appreciate you doing that. Appreciate you standing up for the country. You appreciate you throwing your hat in the ring, because it's obviously you don't have to do it, and there could have been a lot easier things that you could have done with your life. So thank you for that, first of all, and thank you for your service too, sir.
Right back at you.
And so I just wanted to tell my panel, please jump in there anytime you want to, but tell us about what you saw in North Carolina, Cassie, because your post was the one that brought me to this man, and tell me about what you're seeing and what you think about him, and then we'll go to Margot after that too.
Yeah, so right now Cooper is running, and I'm sure everybody on this panel, who, especially those of us in North Carolina, Cooper is not the way that any of us want to go. When you think about Cooper, I automatically go back to COVID. My mama died during COVID. I didn't get to see her for a year. To my understanding, Don had a similar experience with his dad. And then when you look at hurricane relief during Cooper's tenure was a nightmare. And you're not just talking about Helene, you're talking about the hurricanes that hit the East Coast. I mean, it was awful management over and over and over again. Is that really what we want to do to our state again? And so when I went to the Salt and Light Conference, I had the pleasure of meeting Don, and then I gave a speech recently and Don was there, and I just think that he's an awesome guy. So, yeah.
Awesome.
She burned it up in that speech. We gotta play that. We gotta get an audio of that thing and play it, or better yet, a video. It was one of the best speeches I've heard.
Thanks, sir.
You bet.
Yeah, she's killing it on social media too. Like, she got an Elon repost. Like, that's like the holy grail right there. So good on her.
I'm going to tell Elon, Cassie, that I want to see the Doge cuts memorialized into law. And you're not going to hear that from my opponent or anybody else. We got to get serious about that. We get Elon on board. That might not hurt things a little bit. So, Cassie, just keep working your magic there.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. And Margot, yep, jump in there.
Well, I'm going to tell the story about Mac Williams a little differently than Don did. So I actually interviewed Don when he was running for Congress, and I didn't realize he was a very famous author. He is in military books. He's a bestseller. And he sent me one of his books, and I just happened to be reading it like 7 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, don't judge me. And I come across the president in the book, and it's Mac Williams, who happened to be my dad's best friend when my father was in the Navy. And I text Don immediately, and I'm like, "You made Mac Williams the president?" And we just had a little joke back and forth. So my experience with Don has gone back a few years, and I've always been supportive of Don. I think he's a great candidate. I think he's very well-rounded, but more than that, he's a Navy guy who grew up in North Carolina. North Carolina culture means a lot to people from North Carolina. He understands that, and he was handpicked by Dan Bishop to run in his seat for Congress. And I think the other thing that people need to know about Don that he won't say, but I will, is that he's running neck and neck with Michael Whatley right now. And that is a grassroots candidate against literally Goliath. They're neck and neck. And the goal is to keep the momentum and to get Don out more, because he exemplifies what I believe North Carolinians want. They want someone who cares about this country, who's willing to put their job on the line, to go to court for a bunch of families that had soldiers die. If you don't know that story, Don, I know you'll get into it, but he's really done the work. And he represents, I would say, if you were going to put it some way, I would say the heart of North Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. And from what I'm reading about him too, that's the way I feel. And I knew that before, coming in here or whatever. Like, he's going to be a great American patriot, and I believe you're going to be the senator for North Carolina. I think you are. We just got to help you get there. And so that's why we do these things. That's why we hold these, spaces. We hold these lives or whatever. We're live on 3 different platforms tonight. We have almost 700 people watching right now. So, tell us about, like how, like, I guess, like, how it's been so far, how you've been received, how people, what are North Carolinians saying to you when you go to, when you're going out and talking to them? What are they telling you? What are the issues that concern them?
Well, the response has been overwhelming from the grassroots everywhere that we've gone. There is a hunger for patriotic conservative leadership in the Congress and especially the United States Senate. We touched on a couple of things already, with Cooper, and it wasn't just the disastrous Helene relief. I've been in Craven County, in the eastern part of the state, going back to Matthew, the hurricane that ravaged that state. There's still, somebody said 5,000 family members, 5,000 families that never were able to rebuild because of this rebuild NC, ironically, that Cooper put together. So you see North Carolinians suffering from Democrat philosophy that more government is better. Actually, less government is better. Of course, folks are concerned about the cost of living right now. What we have seen is gasoline prices come down considerably under President Trump because there's been effective deregulation. We've got to hit harder in the area of deregulation to help folks with cost. For example, you've got, the dairy products. You're having, a lot of people don't know this, but the USDA puts price supports on homogenized dairy products. And so what happens is the USDA will buy up excessive milk and cheese that are produced and take it off the shelf, which creates, scarcity, which drives prices up. When you look at meat production, you see the same sort of thing. They limit the number, they put a speed limit on the number of, meat products that can come out. And all these regulations favor large corporations and attack small, slaughterhouses and farms. And so we got to do a better job of attacking the regulatory burden that is helping to prop prices too much. People want to be able to live, and young people are concerned about being able to afford homes. I'm an opponent of property taxes. That may be a state issue, but I think property taxes need to be eliminated, and certainly they should be eliminated, possibly for first-time homeowners. But I'm of a belief of the philosophy that the only good tax is a repeal tax, and you guys can use that if you want to. I know we've got to have some, but we've got to do a better job of getting into the weeds and attacking these areas that are keeping, life unaffordable. And one of the things that is most disconcerting, of course, is the astronomical cost of healthcare. And nobody can say that since they passed the Affordable Care Act, as they call it, I call it the Astronomical Cost Act, or otherwise known as Obamacare, nobody can say that the delivery of medical services is more efficient. The opposite is true. Nobody can say that medical costs are more affordable. The opposite is true. I couldn't afford Blue Cross, so I had to go, with a concierge service and Christian healthcare. And we're a small law firm here. It's driving, small companies out of business. And I would like to see Blue Cross broken up. We've only got one, healthcare option here in North Carolina. We should not be having to face monopolies. I'm a believer in using antitrust when it's needed. I've got this little cell phone here. Maybe you all can see this. And I've got one daughter who's a nurse. I got two, and one's a judge. They're both sharp. And one of my daughters showed me how to use this thing when my son was in Afghanistan. We could talk. He was in the most dangerous kinetic province of Afghanistan, Kandahar province. But we could talk with no extra charge. And when I was a kid, younger guy in college at Chapel Hill, my dad would kick my rear end because I get on the phone and run up $50 phone bills. But see, the reason that we can talk across the world is because Ma Bell got busted up. It got too big. We busted it up, and technology improved, competition improved, prices went down. You didn't lose jobs. Those jobs are spread out. And I think we've got large agricultural conglomerates that are driving out small farmers. We need to look at possible some antitrust there. We've got the healthcare situation. We should not be bound to looking only at one healthcare provider. When you go and shop your auto insurance, you got multiple options. I know we're not always satisfied with them, but you got State Farm, I've got USAA or Geico or whoever it might be. But when it comes to healthcare, you've only got one monopoly. And so I think we've got to take action to try to make the cost of living more affordable for North Carolinians all across the board. And I want to do everything I can in my power to isolate and attack the problems. I've talked to farmers, for example, that can't even move a ditch on their own land. The EPA has a regulation called WUSA, the Waters of the USA, and basically it went from trying to to protect, certain endangered species all the way down to canals and ditches and everything else. And we've got to inventory these regulations and attack them and take them out. And of course, I'm pushing something which I call the Deep State Reduction Act. I mentioned Elon Musk a moment ago, but if you look at the DOJ recommendations, very disappointed to see DOJ go. Very disappointed. But if you look at their recommendations, they recommended eliminating approximately 300 of the approximately 400 federal agencies. We may have more agencies than that. It's hard to keep track of them, but that's 75%. In my Deep State Reduction Act, I want to see at least 2/3 eliminated. If you cannot defend an agency and make it constitutionally authorized in any way, shape, or form, such as the Department of Education, because the federal Constitution doesn't authorize it, it's got to go. And you see, part of the problem is that our Constitution was never designed to be a presidential first republic. The Congress was created Article 1, and Congress has got us in this mess. These regulations not only are driving prices up, but the problem is they also impinge on liberty. Every time an unelected bureaucrat publishes another regulation, it goes back to the founders' belief and understanding that the power of the government and the freedom of the individual are inversely proportional to one another. So I'm going to be carrying a meat axe, into the Senate. And I'm going to advocate a philosophy that we have got to take a meat cleaver to government. We got to take these agencies out. I'm frustrated, guys, because the Trump administration has executed more flawlessly than any administration in my lifetime. Lord knew what he was doing when the president wasn't able to come back in 2020. He was really prepared in 2024 and hit the ground running with a regulatory attack like we've never seen before. But, when you juxtapose the Biden administration next to the Trump administration, you see historically the most incompetent and oppressive administration in American history against the most efficient to date. Now, the Trump administration is not perfect, but you basically have bad versus good. The problem is that on January 20th, because of the 22nd Amendment, January 20th, 2029, we're going to have another president. And President Trump has been larger than life. He's been iconic. He's a once in a generation type of leader. And maybe J.D. Vance follows him. Maybe somebody else does. Whoever follows him, even if the Republican, it's not going to be President Trump. So we've got the Congress has got to do its job. We can't simply defer to whatever an administration is going. We've got to go in there. And, we have the president wants the Department of Education gone, for example. He's been gutting it with executive orders, for example. But yet still here we are 300 days into the administration with a Republican-controlled Congress, and we still have a Department of Education. But the question is, why is it when we have the majority, have we not taken that agency out? And why haven't we taken other agencies out? We've got to do that. That's got to be our approach. We have to go to war against the deep state and take these agencies out, because if we don't, the national debt is going to destroy the dollar. And I'm going to go into that in a second. But we cannot allow this national debt to continue to explode. The only way to get it under control is to cut the government and save the money. And that's what I'm going to be preaching from the floor of the United States Senate. I will not be the most popular senator. I'll probably be the most least popular senator. I'm not going to go up there in Cowtown and eat kowtow either to the ghost of Mitch McConnell or to John Thune. I'm going to go up there and argue that we've got to take a meat cleaver to the government, and we've got to put America first. And we can't take a meat cleaver we can't put America first when we have this deep state, which DOJ has shown as a criminal enterprise. It's got to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was on Angela Belcamino's podcast last night, and we were talking about the same thing. And the question was, was DOJ effective, right? DOJ was incredibly effective. I think they pointed out a lot of things that most people weren't aware of.
Sure.
The problem is that we needed Congress to, help them out, to enact some of the cuts that they suggested, because they were good recommendations. And so, was DOJ effective? Yeah, absolutely. I hope that we get a DOJ at the state level. And the problem is that we had a system in place that was completely ineffective. You had the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. Well, most of the people that would report some of these things, they work for this agency. They work for the agency that they're reporting on, because they have inside knowledge. Are you going to report something that's going to put you out of a job? Hell no. So you need this outside agency to look at these things and to have this, this perspective. And so, I agree with you. I wish we had DOJ. I wish, and I know some of the states have looked at putting in the, state level doges too.
We have,
Go ahead.
in North Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. And
We have a wrecking ball and a Doge. We have Doge, and then we have Dave. We have a state auditor named, we call him Auditor Dave, and he's really doing the hard work. He's the one that Don was talking about earlier, found all the mismanagement. And I think Cassie and I saw a lot of it on some of the lives that we watched of our government. But they are trying really hard, and just recently brought out a document, an audit about how much money they wasted in Hurricane Matthew and Florence, and we know they've wasted it in Helene. So we are very proud of Dave and Doge.
We are, and when you think about it, and I pointed this out, the U.S., North Carolina state government is not perfect. There's tremendous waste with Democrat governors, as Margot pointed out. Helene, they set up these agencies like Rebuild NC, and it's supposed to help those poor folks, first off, down in the eastern part of the state that got ravaged 9 years ago by that storm. But they put all these prerequisites in to keep you from getting the money because they don't want you to have the money. And it's absolute corruption. Having said that, however, the federal government is supposed to work more like the state government works. It's supposed to be driven by the legislature. So, for example, a few weeks ago when this horrible film came out about this poor girl in Charlotte murdered Irina, the Ukrainian girl, the North Carolina General Assembly got busy and passed Irina's law, which is not going to totally solve the problem, but it's a step in the right direction. The federal government is supposed to be run by the United States Congress, and the president is supposed to be executing the laws that Congress make. But what Congress has done, as I say, is abdicated its constitutional responsibility because it's turned lawmaking over to unelected bureaucrats. And this happened under Democrat Congresses. I've made the observation, I'll say it again, Democrat-controlled Congresses have been disastrous. Republican Congresses have been weak. What do I mean by that? I would argue there are four separate Democrat Congresses that have destroyed where we have gotten as a nation. You start with the Woodrow Wilson administration, and first of all, the passage of the 16th Amendment to authorize the Income Tax Act was one of the biggest constitutional mistakes in American history. But during that period of time, Congress passed the first Income Tax Act and passed the Federal Reserve Act. And then Woodrow Wilson started this world must be made safe for democracy garbage. We're not a democracy. Then you move into the 1930s with Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal. And they pass all this New Deal legislation to start creating the explosion of the administrative state, giving these unelected bureaucrats the power essentially to make law by these regulations. Then you go from there. The next explosion is during Lyndon Johnson's administration when they pass all this legislation concerning the so-called Great Society. So you have Woodrow Wilson, you have FDR, you have Lyndon Johnson, and then you fast forward into Obamacare, which was nothing but a federal takeover of the healthcare industry. And so with all these four legislative moves, we have a tyrannical deep state. And Doge was valuable in pointing out, as I said, that it is a criminal organization. But our Republican Congresses have been weak. What do I mean by that? We've let the Democrats put these agencies in, but we haven't taken any of them out. They just continue to grow. In fact, in some cases, we built them ourselves with the EPA, for example. But you look at what happened when Trump came in the first time. We needed to take Obamacare out, and you got this from John McCain, and it's still there. Now, we stopped some things about it, but it's still there. Our Republican, we're going to lose Donald Trump in 2029, and if we don't have strong Republican leadership instead of weak jelly spine leaders in the Senate and in the House, we're going to go over the cliff. I was going to Asheville. I've been to Buncombe County a number of times, by the way. I was headed up to Buncombe County one morning, and you guys probably know about this, but there's a website called usdebtclock.org. Anybody listening, if you don't know it, write it down and go there, usdebtclock.org. And if you go to that site, what you can see is the federal debt exploding in front of our own eyes. And one morning I was getting ready to head up to Asheville, and I had that website on, and I had my little cell phone here, and my daughter taught me how to set the timer. I set the timer for 1 minute, and in 1 minute you hear a little bitty. Anybody want to guess how much the debt had increased in 1 minute? Anybody want to take a guess on that? I want to put anybody on the spot.
$100 million?
$2 million 1 minute.
I overshot. Sorry.
But no, it's $2 million in a minute. That breaks down to $120 million in an hour. 2.8 billion per day, $37,000 per second. So you can do the math of what's happened to the debt since we've been here. 37,000 a second. Now that is down from about 55,000 a second under the Democrats. I was with a congressional friend of mine the other night. He was pointing out we brought down the rate of spending. Yeah, we brought it down, but the debt still explodes. That's like if I'm a cocaine addict, I'm saying, hey man, I'm a cocaine addict, but I'm not as bad as I was. I used to take 2 snorts a night. Now I'm only taking 1. I mean, it is still going to kill us. And what's going to happen if we don't get it under control? This is the thing that's driving me to stay in a race and run, because the Republican Party is ignoring this problem. My opponent won't touch it. All he'll do is say, Trump, 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 Trump. Nobody will touch the problem. There's no, you like that, Margot? Was that you laughed about? But there's no plan to attack the problem. Now, what's going to happen if we study history? Here's the thing about it. I know you guys study history. You know that every great nation that controlled the earth for a period of time had the dominant currency. Okay, you read the New Testament. The Romans had the denarius, or the denarii, as they call it. President Trump talks about the golden age. That comes from the Dutch. The Dutch had the gilding. The Spanish, we just celebrated Columbus Day a little over a month ago, during the period of Spanish domination of the earth under Queen Isabella and others, had the peso. That they yielded to the British. They used to say the sun will never set on British soil, which had the pound sterling. And the pound sterling fell to the dollar finally at Bretton Woods in 1944. And I point this out, everybody gets excited about President Trump sending these B-2 bombers, drop these bunker busting bombs on Iran's nuclear program. But I asked this question: do you see the French having done that, or the British, or the Canadians, or the Mexicans? No. The reason is because the United States dollar remains, for the time being, the international currency of trade. I'll give you an example. I was about 15, 20 years ago. I had gone to Belarus with a friend of mine from a church. We were involved in bringing Belarusian kids over into the Charlotte area during the summer. There was a city in Belarus, by the way, is the country just north of Ukraine, where the war is going on, just east of Poland, and just west of Russia. And in the southeastern portion of that country is a city called Mogilev, which is not far from Chernobyl. Nuclear spill out was causing health problems. So we bring kids over. And some folks in our church will wind up adopting these kids. Well, there were a couple of kids adopted by a couple in our church, but the third sibling was left in Belarus. So I went there along with the father to try to persuade the Belarusian government to release that kid. I can speak a little bit of Russian with a red dead accent. You'd laugh at me if I tried, but seriously, I can a little bit. I started learning it in the Navy. But when we got there, we weren't able to get the kid out. But I remember there was one time that we went into this outdoor flea market. Like these flea markets, you got clothing, you got pieces of art, pieces of glassware. Well, I saw this Russian chess set, and I wanted to buy this Russian chess set. I'm not a very good chess player, but I like to collect chess sets with Civil War and Revolutionary War. And so I saw this chess set, and I whipped out a $20 bill. And I'll never forget what happened. You guys know what happened when I whipped that $20 bill out? Take a guess.
If that got cheaper, they'll bargain with you.
Well, it nearly started a riot because they wanted that American dollar. Now, I was breaking Belarusian law. I didn't realize it. But it was an example to me as to the power of the U.S. dollar. Nixon took us off the gold standard. We became a fiat currency in 71, I believe. But he forced the Arabs into what we call a petrodollar arrangement, so that all oil has to be traded internationally, has to go through the dollars. It kept the dollar strong, even though gold was no longer tied to it. But what's going to happen if we don't get this debt under control is that the United States dollar, because we're fighting not only the forces of evil, we're fighting them everywhere. We could talk about that. We had 2 guardsmen shot today. God bless them and their families. Charlie Kirk was murdered. We're fighting the force of evil. We're also fighting the law of mathematics. And if our dollar collapses, we will fall just as quickly as the Brits fell when the pound sterling fell. And I can tell you that there are 5 countries leading the charge against us, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and others in line. Saudi Arabia was trying to take us off the petrodollar arrangement when Biden was there. If Kamala had stolen the election, we probably would have already lost the dollar. But we Republicans have no plan to attack the debt and to save the dollar. And it's foolish. You know, George S. Patton said famously that an imperfect plan that is, recklessly and violently executed is better than a perfect plan that sits on the shelf and gathers dust. We've got no plan. And I'm going to lead the charge in the Florida Senate to try to force our leadership to have a plan to attack. Now, when we do it, here's what's going to happen. When you take candy from a baby, the baby screams. We know we're dealing with the Democrat press. This liberal press is a functional propagandist arm of the Democrat Party. They call Margaret Thatcher the milk snatcher. They're going to say you're taking kids, taking candy. Well, the Constitution was never set to create a government that is a lollipop factory. And we're going to have to be tough, and we're going to have to cut, or it won't matter anymore. And so I'm staying in the race because we're in an urgent situation. You think about Niagara Falls. I've been there. And you can see when you look at the peaceful water headed to the rapids, everything looks peaceful. All of a sudden, boom, you're over the rapids. We're coming closer and closer to that every day. And our Republican Party has got to wake up, and Congress has to get off its you-know-what and attack the problem and understand that we're going to get a lot of opposition, but we cannot continue to kick the can down the road.
I want to jump in. So first of all, I want to thank you for writing the book on Extortion 17. I was airborne recon in the Air Force, and I had friends overwatch that mission, and it really affected our community. So thank you for doing all the research on that. And also I heard you say love the medical freedom stuff. If you feel so inclined when you win, Idaho has pushed through the model legislation for Medical Freedom Act. And so if you want to take it to the hill for us, that'd be fun. But I guess I have a couple questions since you were JAG. I guess 2 parts. One is, I know our congressional and Senate candidates in Idaho, you can tell a lot about them by who they're donating to, or who their donors are, like grassroots versus not. And a lot of people give up because they don't have millions of dollars to run against, our very, very, very old, Congressman Simpson or Senator Risch, and they just kind of throw in the towel. So I guess curious, because campaign finance is actually a super big deal in the race. What is your take right now going from Whatley's versus your campaign?
Hey, Don, can I step in and tell them a little bit of backstory, because I don't want you to take the hit on that.
Please do.
So the NCGOP has really done a big disservice to the voters in North Carolina. They, the chair and the RNC committee woman and RNC committee man decided, without going to the executive committee of the state, which I'm a part of, to go ahead and allocate funds specifically to Whatley, and did not take into account the primary challenger. And it really set a bad tone. As a matter of fact, I would say it split the party, but it also said, hey, look, Don, you're not getting any money from the NCGOP, and the RNC is not going to look at you either. They didn't even give him an opportunity. So, Don, I want you to take it from there. But as a member of the executive committee in the NCGOP, to not have a vote, and I'm there to represent the people, that really smacks in the face of all of us.
Yeah, and Lauren, first off, thanks for your service. You may or may not know Captain Joni Marquez. She was the firing officer on the AC-130 that overwatched that mission before they were told to break off, and a private civilian contractor plane jumped in. Was top secret identity. I have a feeling I know which agency. It's a 3-letter agency. But back to what's happened with the GOP situation and my opponent. The North Carolina Republican Party and the RNC have been cheating. The rules for both organizations require absolute neutrality. There is no exception to that, except in one instance under Federal Rule 11, the RNC Rule 11, the Republican National Committee can endorse a candidate only after filing has closed. Filing will close in North Carolina December 19th at midnight, going into December 20th, and only after filing is closed if there's one candidate remaining between the close of filing and primary day can they endorse. They've endorsed anyway. They've cheated. the North Carolina Plan of Organization requires absolute neutrality. But the leadership of the party, with the exception of the vice chair, Gay Dillard, I have no evidence she's been involved in this, but they've cheated. So they're cheating. They're pushing a candidate. As I mentioned in some of my opening remarks, it's always a disaster when the institutional apparatus of any party, Republican or Democrat, tries to ram a candidate down the voters' throats. And especially in this case, a candidate with a record that is inherently weak, that has been spotty on election integrity, that got elected and reelected as state chair in 2023 based upon a cell phone app that could not be monitored or checked or verified. And there's a lot of division in the party because of that. This particular opponent from the headquarters of the North Carolina Republican Party pushed the jab, telling people that he was going to take the jab. You should take the jab too. You can ask your doctor about it, but it is not a matter of science, of politics. He said it's a matter of science. People have been hurt, killed, and died and maimed because of that jab that was irresponsible. I'll tell you one of the things that happened during the George Floyd riots. George Floyd committed suicide. Y'all, I've got a long record of writing. You can check my record. You go to an American Thinker and see a lot of things I've written there, and on Fox News and other other outlets as well. But I wrote an op-ed in 2020 called "Who Killed George Floyd?" You see, I read the Hennepin County coroner's report. I knew that there was 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in George Floyd's system. I watched all of the Axon body cam video for almost an hour before they isolated that snippet of Chauvin standing there and George saying, "I can't breathe." And when you do that, you know that George was fighting with the officers. You know, they told him to put his hands at 10 and 2. He finally did. They brought him across the street, put him in the back of a police cruiser. He was fighting with them. He was fighting them inside the police cruiser, demanding to be let out. He said inside the back of the police cruiser 7 times now, inside the back of the police cruiser, "I can't breathe." 7 times before we saw that snippet on the ground. George demanded to be put on the ground. They put him on the ground at his own demand, then snip this one thing, him saying, "I can't breathe," and they make you think it was the officers that was doing that. No, he was dying anyway. He was dying from suicide by fentanyl. They used that lie as an excuse to tear the country apart. Now, during that period of time, there was some knucklehead at the North Carolina Young Republicans that wanted to march in solidarity with BLM and to march against police brutality. We have the parade permit requested from the city of Raleigh. It was to march from point A and to end at a North Carolina Republican Party headquarters. Whatley allowed them on the premises and allowed that march against police brutality. So you're dealing with someone who's making horrible snap judgment decisions. He bragged about being the first state chair to bash our J6 patriots. By contrast, I'm a J6 lawyer. President Trump pardoned 2 of my clients, actually, Lieutenant Lawrence, I may have mentioned that earlier, and Elliot Bechet, who was the youngest of the known J6 patriots, who had just turned 20 at the time, have represented others in situations. But Whatley bragged about that. We have him on tape being interviewed by CNN sometime in March, we believe, of 2021. Now, President Trump is now gone, and the questioner asked him and said, "Mr. Whatley, Senator McConnell says that J6 was all this, chaos and insurrection created by President Trump. Are you going," and I'm paraphrasing, "are you going to disagree with Senator McConnell?" Whatley says, "No, I'm not going to disagree with Senator McConnell." In other words, he was assenting to McConnell's indictment of President Trump for J6. And we now know and knew then that it was a fedsurrection, not an insurrection. And so you're looking at snap judgment decisions that weakened this guy. Listen, we're about to go off the cliff, and the next United States Senator will serve 2 years with Trump. Of course, I'll have his back. But 4 years after Trump, and we've got to look at who we want in the United States Senate from North Carolina carrying out these battles when the freedom of the United States is going to be at risk. And as I started to say earlier, if we lose the dollar, they're not going to replace the dollar with another paper currency. In other words, when the pound sterling fell, and you saw Britain fell as an international power into, just above third world, they're an industrial power, but they're not what they were. It's not going to be from the pound sterling to the dollar, or from the peso to the pound sterling. We're not going to the Chinese currency. It won't be the Japanese yen. It won't be the Canadian dollar. It won't be the euro dollar. No, it's going to be something called a central bank digital currency. This is where we are headed. If we don't develop a plan to attack this debt and reverse it and save the dollar. And if you think it was bad during COVID, when they used COVID as a trial run to see how far they could get away with their totalitarianistic tactics, you ain't seen nothing yet if the dollar falls and it's supplanted by a central bank digital currency. Now, my question, do we want my opponent or Roy Cooper in the United States Senate when we are fighting battles they're going to put us on the edge of going over Niagara Falls? I don't think so.
No, and I want to go ahead, Cassie. You open forum, please. You guys jump in there whenever you see fit. Like it just open discussion here with Don.
Thank you. So I don't know how much longer I'll be able to be here, but I really wanted to ask this question. Right now, I have noticed, don't ask me how it slipped me by, but over the past few weeks, I've noticed how bad illegal immigration is in North Carolina. It's overwhelmingly bad. And what I want to know is now that I and so many others know that NGOs are funding this,
Right.
They're funding bringing in illegal immigrants, they're funding keeping them here. And a lot of their income comes from the feds, from state funds. Is there something that you could do as North Carolina senator to potentially end that?
First of all, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. You mentioned Elon Musk, and Elon pointed out that these NGOs are just a sham. You see, if I set up a private foundation, I've only got to give away 5% of it at the end of the year. And within the private foundation, I can trade stocks all I want with zero capital gain, with zero income at all. And so if I'm ultra wealthy like George Soros or Bill Gates, I can set up Foundation A and Foundation B, C, and D. And as Elon pointed out, these NGOs all have an altruistic purpose. Save the whales, save the penguins, save the spotted owl, save the Democrats. They never accomplish their altruistic objective, but they simply give their money from one to the other, to the other, to the other, and get the money into Democrat organizations. Now, how do you attack this problem? This problem is created, as I said a moment ago, the greatest constitutional mistake the nation ever committed was the passage of the 16th Amendment to set up the income tax system. And you see, these NGOs are built on a corrupt income tax system. They're built because of the opportunity to take deductions, the opportunity to let money grow inside of them. If you remove the income tax system and remove the deductions that are available, they will die on the vine. And so we have to understand the root of the problem. I mean, I want to see the income tax ended, and it's going to be a battle to do that. But you've got to end the income tax and end the deduction opportunities for these corrupt NGOs. Above and beyond that, there's certain NGOs that need to be investigated. You know, I have been calling for, and as have others, for President Trump, for example, to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, or Sea-Air as a terrorist organization. Some of them are operating on the verge of, and in fact, they're operating within criminal activity. When we were in Greensboro speaking on the Saturday to the North Carolina Federation of Republican Women, on the Saturday that it was announced that the Border Patrol arrived in Charlotte. After I finished my talk, I was going to go somewhere else. We immediately returned to Charlotte and went down to First Ward. And when we were getting there, things were about to disperse for the day. The TV trucks were still there. They're getting their footage in. But the first thing that struck me was a bunch of these young 20-year-old types wearing these red shirts with white lettering saying that socialism is the future. And then you're seeing all these signs. And the question is, who is funding this? When you go back to what happened during the George Floyd riots, and you're seeing bricks all of a sudden show up, who is funding this? We've got to go after a number of these NGOs with a prosecutorial vengeance if we can't get the income tax eliminated so they don't have the tax advantages. See, they live off a corrupt tax code. You got to take the tax code out. But until the tax code can be taken out, and it's going to be a war to do that, but we've got to try to fight that war anyway. We've got to go after them with a prosecutorial vengeance. They're involved in political activity that is pro-socialist, that is pro-communist, that is pro-Islamic. We've heard about the red and green and blue alliance. In other words, the red alliance is communist, which of course Obama is. The green alliance is Islamic, which Obama was as well. And the blue alliance is the Democrat Party. And if you have these NGOs that are funneling money into these political organizations, they're not doing what Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code envisions, and that is to promote, artistic and literary and sports activities, other activities. They're into using the tax code. They're taking advantage of the tax code to push leftist agendas. And these leftist agendas, let's make it very clear, are attacking the United States Constitution. So I want to see investigation and prosecutions, but I want to see the income tax system totally eliminated or revised so that these NGOs no longer have the advantage that they have. It's a real concern. I'm glad you brought it up, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Don.
You bet.
Yeah, it's that became there are people that are involved like Margot and Lauren and stuff like that, and they know these things, but Doge really helped to expose a lot of this corruption, expose a lot of the flaws in the system that are being used against us, right? The NGOs and stuff like that, they don't actually have to produce a result. They're just, it's like a money laundering scam or whatever.
Right.
And so, in terms of like the Senate, Congress is largely defunct in the opinion of a lot of American voters, right? Conservative voters, even Democrat voters. It's like it just seems to not accomplish anything good. And even further in the Senate, it's like Congress is like a high school degree. The Senate is a college degree in terms of like swampiness and in terms of like getting nothing done. And so being an outlier is tough.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that I see and what I would like to see from good conservative candidates is building a coalition around these ideals, building a team to get this done. A lot of these candidates will they'll put out a good idea or whatever, and it's going to go nowhere because they're not going to recruit people to help them out. They're not going to recruit people to get this job done. They're just going to throw it out there. They're going to, post a couple things on social media, and then it dies in whatever, whatever institution it is, the House, the Senate, whatever the case may be. And so, we see these things. We see, oh, this is a really good idea or whatever. And so we hope, that they're going to get it done, but then they get absolutely nothing done because they don't work with other conservatives. They don't. It seems like there's no team, especially with Republicans, especially with conservatives. And so that is a huge issue for a lot of us. And so that it makes me concerned for the 2026 midterms because it demotivates people. It demotivates the base. It demotivates people because we rallied behind President Trump in 2024. And that's why we got such a big turnout. But the thing is like when we see these people basically working for themselves, not getting anything done, we see, absolute gridlock in the things that we voted for. It's really like it demotivates people. And so when we're looking at candidates, we're looking at people that are going to get the job done. We're looking at people that are willing to buck the system, that are willing to try and build support around these things that we wanted because we voted for something and we're not getting it. And President Trump is doing everything that he can. But he needs help. He needs help with the Congress. He needs help with the Senate. And so, in terms of the Senate, like it's really tough. And so, for Senate candidates, I think it's more important than anything because there's more in Congress. And so, if we get you in there, what are you going to do different? What are you going to do to make things happen?
We use a phrase that I agree with, and that's buck the system. What typically happens with a rookie senator? If it's a Republican, they would have gone in years past and kowtowed to Mitch McConnell. Now it's John Thune. I can tell you I'm probably going to be the most unpopular Republican in the Senate because the system must be bucked, because the system, frankly, is doing us a disservice. If the system is not bucked, the nation will die. The constitutional republic will die. And it has to be led in the United States Congress. It was Congress that got us into this mess with this explosion of agencies and regulatory, tyranny that I've described, from Woodrow Wilson to Franklin Roosevelt to Lyndon Johnson to Barack Obama and others in between. But so Congress has got to take it out. If you don't buck the system, let me just give you an example here. Let's say that my opponent were able to get the nomination, which he's not going to do, but if he were, and then somehow got past Roy Cooper, which he could not. Let's say my opponent wound up getting sworn into the Senate. You're going to have not only Tillis 2.0, but what you're going to basically have is status quo republicanism. And status quo republicanism is not going to get the job done. Our Republican Congress right now is overseeing a massive explosion in the national debt, and we're looking elsewhere. So the system has got to be bucked. And I'm going to do my best to try to recruit other like-minded members of the Senate. There may be 2 or 3 that are willing to jump on board. We've got to be bold and we got to be persistent. We have got to sound the alarm everywhere we go. In this whole business, kind of a budget done. The government is shut, quote unquote, shut down. It's not really shut down, but that's the perception they want you to believe. And Congress goes home. Wouldn't it be nice to make all that money and work, 180 days out of the year? It's the craziest thing I've seen. We got to have a hardworking Congress. We've got to recapture the constitutional vision of limited government. That means when you go, and it's spelled out in the 10th Amendment, that any power that is not specifically delegated to the federal government goes back to the states. And we've got to make our people understand that large government brings about tyranny. And I think younger Americans are prepared to hear that message. But that message has to be put out there in clear and unapologetic terms. President Reagan said that the government that governs least is the government that governs best. And we can't, be a part of this deep swamp cobble, unless we're willing to take, and at the same time, cut the government the way it needs to be cut. So I'm going to go there understanding that I'm one voice. You may have Rand Paul, you may have Mike Lee, you may have somebody else. But we've got to build a coalition of constitutional conservatives who are not concerned about the Democrats squealing and crying and the Democrat press, calling us milk snatchers. Because listen, I've got kids and grandkids I got to look in the eye, and win, lose, or draw, and we're going to win. But nonetheless, I'll be able to do that and sleep at night. Because it's about their future. And it's about saving the nation at this point, because we're on a trajectory to fail if there isn't radical change, moving to the right and re-embracing constitutional principles and putting the Congress back in charge of the federal government.
Okay, Don, I got the big question. And that is, North Carolina is known for having some of the largest military bases in the country. And we've always had great support from our senators, specifically Ted Budd and even Tillis. He did the burn pit thing. I'm not sure if he got it done, but he tried. I'm not a Tillis fan. I'm very transparent about that. But I want to know what you're going to do to ensure that the military bases in North Carolina and the veterans in North Carolina stay a top priority.
Well, the other day I made a comment to the North Carolina Federation of Republican Women, which I'll repeat now. And I pointed out that, in my belief, the lowest ranked private in the Army or the Marine Corps, the lowest ranked seaman in the Navy or the Coast Guard, the lowest ranked airman in the Air Force is more important to this country than the highest ranked member of the United States Congress.
True.
And I think it is, first of all, it is an absolute travesty that our veterans have inferior health care to these champagne sipping, cheese eating members of the Congress. And I'm going to push for veterans health care. The department, the VA has been a bureaucratic disaster. You could even eliminate the VA and give veterans, I wouldn't say eliminate altogether, in terms of healthcare, give veterans a card. The veteran should be able to go anywhere. It's a different situation than it was when we had a draft. We no longer have a draft. We haven't had a draft in half a century now. So every veteran that steps up to serve our country is putting his and her life on the line voluntarily. So that has got to happen. There's nothing that makes me more passionate than defense of veterans. And you can be rest assured that I'm going to be in their corner, just like when Pete and I fought so hard to get Lieutenant Lawrence out of Leavenworth from having been prosecuted politically by the Obama Pentagon. I think that every veteran still being held in Leavenworth who was sent there during the Iraq War or the Afghan War, based upon the way that Biden foolishly withdrew us and left billions of dollars there for the enemy, every one of those veterans should be pardoned and released. They're being held in Leavenworth, and I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure that our veterans are a top priority, along with first responders and others who put their lives on the line for this nation. It is a special passion for me. I've had 16 books published, and as Margot has pointed out, some have hit the bestseller list by the grace of God. Wasn't my great writing, you just strike lightning once in a while, but 15 of those have been on the United States military. It's where my passion is, and if given the opportunity to serve, I'm hoping to have the opportunity to serve on two committees at least. One is Armed Services, and the other is the Judiciary Committee, because my latest book, Kangaroo Court, which came out last year, was an indictment on the Democrats' systematic use of lawfare to attack the Constitution, going back over a period of 30 years. And so those are my passions: the U.S. military and ensuring that this lawfare ends and that federal judges are put back in their place, not legislating from the bench. And the military is going to have its best friend in the Senate once I'm sworn in, and I can't wait to serve those men and women in uniform, especially those here in North Carolina. I wish we had a Navy base here. I'm a Navy guy. We do have Navy. That's right. Go Navy. You're right. It's going to be a great
say that to Jay Harms.
That's right. But my son is in the Army. My dad was in the Army. I say I'm the only oddball in the family. My son spent nearly a year in Afghanistan with the 82nd Airborne and is still active duty. So I have a very, very strong passion for our men and women in uniform and for our veterans as well.
Well,
Go Air Force. I have a question about what you just said. So a lot of the big personalities, especially on X and like the big military personalities, they're right now still struggling with they got kicked out of the military for not taking the vaccine, right? And what we're seeing is there was no punishment in the leadership in the military whatsoever. Like they did not go through and remove like the commands that issued those illegal orders to take the COVID vaccine, which it was illegal. So we're seeing like a big complaint, and as a byproduct of that, you're also seeing, I'm sure you saw like the seditious six, and then the members of the military that are coming out, these left lunatics, saying, "Oh, we're gonna, thwart Trump," and all of this stuff happening. And it's kind of like a byproduct, right? Like we allowed them to do the illegal thing, and then it transcended into, we have this lunacy amongst our ranks. A big issue is to get rid of the leadership who started that. And I see a big push for that on X. I see people who can't get back in, even though they've been cleared and told, okay, yeah, come back in and we're ready to take you back into the military. They can't even get back in. Still, they're getting red tape. So what would you do in the Senate to mitigate all of this? Because I think it's just a domino effect of issues.
First of all, let me answer that peripherally and go straight into it. Peripherally, I'm disappointed in the very slow rate of prosecutions by the Justice Department. And even they fumbled the attempted prosecution of James Comey and Letitia James by filing too late. They might be able to correct that, but I'm very, very disappointed in the slow rate of prosecutions. I've got all the confidence in the world in Pete Hegseth. As I mentioned, I've worked with him closely, haven't talked to him really since he was nominated as Secretary of Defense. But you're seeing a lot of the no-nonsense, no-bull approach that I knew he would bring. And one is, of course, ordering the Navy to begin to investigate the situation with Mark Kelly. I've been interviewed several times, I think 3 times on that. I was actually on Benny Johnson's podcast earlier today. Benny wanted to go into that. I went into that and explained the military's authority to bring a retired Navy captain back on board under Article 2 of the UCMJ. We can bring retirees back. Not every veteran can be brought back, but if you're a retiree and you're eligible to be paid, you can be brought back, providing the UCMJ. I'm hoping that we're going to bring Kelly back up on charges of sedition under Article 94, of contempt against the president under Article 88, of conduct unbecoming an officer under Article 133, and of conduct that's prejudicial to good order and discipline under Article 134. We have got to be serious about punishing these communists that are attacking our Constitution. So, to answer your question, I'm going to work very closely with the Secretary of War to ensure, especially with regard to the COVID issues, that the red tape is cut. You know, it's kind of like Western North Carolina. The problem with the inability to get things done has been red tape, bureaucratic stumbling, and foolishness and lack of action by the Democrat government. And since the new czar over there has been appointed the czar of hurricane relief, we haven't seen much either. But it's going to take cutting. We're going to have to identify the regulations that are keeping these folks from coming back, and they need to be paid. They need to be paid back pay for every day from the moment they left, and to bring them back on board. What an act of high irresponsibility by the Biden administration to force members of the United States military, who, if you think about it, you know, we're not even in danger from the COVID virus because they're in a much younger age bracket, to either take this experimental and dangerous jab or to be pushed out. And I'm going to lead the charge to cut that red tape. And I'm not going to back down until this situation is resolved. As I say, our vets and our active duty service members not only are my highest priority, but they are the crown jewel of our nation. And, you know, there was a United States Army, United States Navy, and a United States Marine Corps before the Declaration of Independence was signed and before the Constitution was ever passed. These are the institutions on which our constitutional republic rests. You're going all the way back to patriots who were willing to take up pitchforks and flintlock rifles to take on the greatest nation at the time in the world, most powerful military. And we owe them that debt of gratitude. And I'm not going to let that slip away. I'm going to fight that with a passion, with the same passion that I fought against these rules of engagement that prosecuted our military members, and with the same passion that I fought to protect J6 patriots who were being ramrodded by an unconstitutional DOJ prosecutorial scheme.
Yeah, and just, you know, I appreciate you saying that too. We got just under 2,000 live listeners right now. I want you to, everybody that's listening, please follow Don Brown for NC. Please go to his page, check out his posts, repost him, help him get his message out there, because he's a great American patriot. And I just wanted to, I just want to add a little bit to what you said too. My best friend, who was also a retired first sergeant, just like me, he replaced me in my last two jobs. I won't say his name on here to dox him, but he was about to start terminal leave, and they made him get the jab before he retired. Absolutely no reason to. He was not going to put a uniform on again in about 2 months, and they made him do it just for a spreadsheet, which is just completely crazy to me that they would go to this length to do these things. And so, I just wanted to give a little context to, people, to some of the stuff that happened in there. You don't need to answer to anything to that, but in terms of like Mark Kelly, it really troubled me what he is doing. He didn't need to open his mouth. He knew exactly what he's doing. And so I just really, I'm just dumbfounded that of an officer would do something like that. It's just crazy. There were no illegal orders. There were no illegal orders given. They cannot even answer for these things. And so, as a JAG officer, that has to be troubling to you too, because they can't even say what the illegal orders were that they were telling people to disobey. And so that's really troubling, especially because he is a member of the Senate. He is a retiree, and hopefully the UCMJ is a little bit faster than the Department of Justice, because we cannot just let that happen. That cannot continue to happen, because it's going to be like we're going to lose our country if stuff like this keeps happening. Like we are in bad shape where senators can come out there and openly say you need to disobey the commander in chief. That it's really troubling to me, and it's troubling to a lot of Americans too.
They're trying to argue that they made a generic statement that you don't have to obey an unlawful order, and in a generic sense, taken out of context, that statement is correct, but you can't take the statement out of context. Now, I have here before me, I have a little stogie and I have a lighter. And if I were to sit around with a bunch of guys and say, hey, how about a fire? Somebody strikes the fire. You see the fire there? In that context, that's perfectly legal. But if I were to go into a theater and yell fire, 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 and there was no fire, then I've broken the law, you see. And so when you look at the context of what the seditious six have done, first off, they're clearly sending a signal to members of the armed forces who are involved in the administration's war against fentanyl on the high seas. You know, we lost more Americans to fentanyl in 1 year than in 10 years of the Vietnam War. And since the president has used the military to seal the borders, they're trying to bring this stuff in by sea. And there is plenty of historical precedent. The president has authority to protect Americans' lives, property interests on the high seas. Going back to Thomas Jefferson, the Barbary Wars, he sent the Navy and the Marine Corps into the Mediterranean because these Muslim pirates were attacking our ships without congressional authority. Abraham Lincoln seized the British ship, the RMS Trent, that had Confederate sympathizers without congressional authority. Franklin Roosevelt, in 1941, before Pearl Harbor, gave the U.S. Navy shoot and destroy orders to attack German U-boats that were hitting American convoys going across the North Atlantic, again without congressional authority. Ronald Reagan sent the 82nd Airborne into Grenada to protect Americans, and that communist government had toppled the civilian government. George H.W. Bush sent the army into Panama. Bill Clinton blockaded Haiti. You see, there is plenty of precedent for presidents of the United States using the military on the high seas to protect Americans. We've had thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of American funerals because of this fentanyl coming into the country. And these Democrats should be ashamed of themselves. This Mark Kelly and these clowns that have joined with him know that there is no unlawful order. They can't recite an unlawful order. What the president's done is constitutionally authorized. He hasn't, they said nothing when Obama ordered the attacks and killing of American citizens in the Middle East with Predator drones. Now, some of those American citizens who were killed were shady characters, but the Democrats said nothing about that. You could have made the argument that order might have been unlawful because they're American citizens. Not one word. Just like they said not one word when Obama, the deporter-in-chief, deported 3.1 million Americans, well over a million more than President Trump has. Not one word, because their objective is to advance the power of the Democrat Party above the United States Constitution and everything else. And they're trying to divide our troops against themselves. They're trying to put seeds of doubt within the troops. Well, I'm not going to take this drug boat out because it's an unlawful order and Mark Kelly's got my back. When you do that sort of thing, you risk the lives of American service members. It is absolutely seditious. It is absolutely un-American. Mark, this Senator Kelly guy, he needs to be brought back up. He needs to be subject to an Article 32 investigation. He needs to face a general court-martial for sedition and for the other violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice that I just recited. And in the military, we have a real meaningful speedy trial clock. So if the speedy trial clock plays out, it'll be a lot faster than it will be on the civilian side. So I hope Pete Hegseth will stick to his guns here, and I'm sure that he probably will.
He has to. He has to. Like you have to curb that. We cannot just allow that to just stand. And so I just want to be respectful of your time here, Don. You've been here with us for over an hour, so I just want to make sure you're good on time or
listen. Guys, I'm good on time. If we need to go to midnight, whatever we need to do. Listen, this race is important. Our country and our state are on the line here. And, we got to send warriors not only to the Senate, the Congress, but at every level. And what you guys are doing, you are serving as warriors using your platforms on social media. we all have to have each other's backs at every level. And I think it's important to answer questions, to be transparent. My distinguished opponent has one battle on Trump, and I love President Trump, but Trump is not a policy. Okay, so voters deserve it. North Carolinians deserve it. I'll spend as much time as we need to spend because it's that important. So I'm good to go.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And my hope, in bringing you on here too, is that other big social media influencers will see you, will help you get your name out there. I believe that is the new grassroots. That's how we do this. That's how we're going to win against these establishment, because they're huge. They have a lot of money. They have, the media that's backing them up, and they're, other platforms really silence us a lot. And that's why I'm really frustrated with the Georgia Republican Party in not using X more, not using Rumble, not using these things where we can get the message out there, where we can get the good guys out there, where we can get them name recognition, where we can use the platform and not be suppressed. And so I appreciate you coming in here. Land, I know that you are working. Did you want to say something? She is a huge fan of Don. Are you able to speak, Land?
Yeah, really quick, Don. I met you at the movie premiere for Extortion 17.
Yeah.
I'm a friend of Mr. Cole, as you know. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that when I met him, I knew right off the bat, he is very transparent. He's very real. It was refreshing. I absolutely fell in love with the man he was and what he said to us. He's a real one. And I love you, Jay, for doing this for him, because he really needs to be. North Carolina needs him. We need him yesterday. So Don is amazing. And I just wanted to say that. Thanks so much.
Lan, I think you're amazing. Thanks for the kind comments, and really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Don.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on here too. And like I said, my goal is to platform, candidates like you to help you get your name out there and stuff. And, use every opportunity to exercise social media, these different ways to reach people, because a lot of conservatives, I see it on X and stuff like that. They'll talk about like, oh, don't go to TikTok, don't talk to people on there, or these platforms are bad. What I have a pretty big TikTok, and what I can tell you is I'm finding a bunch of patriots that I didn't connect with here on X. And so if you're afraid as a Republican to reach out, to use these social medias, use all these different things, you're going to miss a lot of people, a lot of opportunities to get your name out there, a lot of opportunities to build your candidacy. And so I'm thankful for the ones that are willing to jump into lives, the ones that are willing to jump into spaces, ones that are willing to get onto TikTok and stuff like that, because there are patriots out there that will support you, that will help you get your message out there. You really don't need to do a ton. You can let people like me and Lauren and some of the other ones do the dirty work for you. You just you put your message out there, because we will latch on to the good ones. And so I just appreciate you coming in here tonight and talking with us.
Well, I prefer this type of format. One reason is because we're not limited to time, questions, space, I've done a lot of traditional media, but used to be somewhat regular on Fox. They're squeezing us out because the RNC has put a kibosh on them. But even still, if I go into, we're on Newsmax earlier this week, you got 7 minutes, and we can't go deep into anything. And I understand they've got segments, and I'm grateful to be on traditional platforms as well, and traditional news shows where I can, because we're trying to get out in every area. But I like the format here. Anybody can ask any question, and nobody's restricted. And I think it's the best way for us to get to know each other and understand exactly. When you're going to vote for somebody, you need to know that candidate's philosophy. The core philosophy is really more important than an answer necessarily in one question. I mean, I can answer a question a certain way and get tongue-tied and say it the wrong way, but is my philosophy going to be correct? And I'm going to come back to that rooted philosophy. And that's the real question. And on social media and on platforms like this, you all have a better chance, or anyone talking to a candidate has a better chance to get a feel for that core philosophy. That's why I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so talk to us about the 2026 midterms. How do what are your concerns? What are the hurdles that you need to overcome? What are some of the things, how can people help you out? How can people help you get your message out there? What are the things that you need to overcome? Where do you see your path to victory?
Right now, there are two opponents. There's a Republican opponent, Mike Whatley, the former RNC chair or co-chair, depending on what you want to call him, because Laura Trump was there with him. And then, of course, the Democrat Roy Cooper. We're focused right now on the primary in North Carolina. Is a short runway after New Year's because early voting begins February 12th. The primary date itself is March 3rd. We have been outspent probably 100 to 1. However, I will say that folks were really surprised last week because the Carolina Journal, which is a pro-Whatley journal, have done everything to try to support him, released a poll showing me against Cooper and Whatley against Cooper. We are at a statistical tie, which shocked a lot of people because the mainstream media is trying to deem Whatley as the anointed one. But as I said earlier, we've been all over the state and we've seen the folks that are on fire. I note they did not publish a poll me directly against Whatley, and I suspect that they took that poll, and they probably did not publish that for good reason. But what we're in need of is multifaceted. Yes, we do need to raise money. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it. We had a fundraising organization working with us when we were running against Tillis and doing fairly well up until Tillis dropped out in June. Once he dropped out in June, the Republican Party, we were told our fundraiser to drop us and put the word out that no other fundraisers could work with us if they ever wanted more Republican work. At that time, the Republican Party was looking to coronate its own candidate rather than what the grassroots wanted. Laura Trump turned them down. I didn't think Laura Trump was going to accept the challenge. And, given her station in life, she doesn't live in North Carolina. Then finally, Whatley jumped in and Trump sort of gave this blessing half-heartedly. But we're running against a machine. So we do need, I'd rather have, a million people give me $1 than have, a benefactor put a single $1 million check in our account. Because smaller contributions mean that we're gathering grassroots support and we're not going to be beholden to anyone. So that is needed. And you can go to brown4nc.com and help us out there. That is our website. We also are putting together what I believe is going to be a very effective ground organization. If you're in North Carolina, please go to brown4nc.com and express an interest in helping us on the ground. We're putting our troops together in every county in North Carolina. We're going to need folks who are willing to work early polling sites, who are willing to get out sample ballots, who are willing to make calls. So we need ground warriors. We will need to win this race on the ground because we will be outspent. We want to close the spending gap. We understand that we're fighting a machine. And the other thing that can be very helpful, whether you're in North Carolina or not, is that you just alluded to a moment ago, the power of social media. If you got 500 friends on Facebook, contact them all. Contact folks that are like-minded and ask them to get a group of 100 or 200 or 300. And we want to have a pyramidal social media, design so that social media can be the tool and the weapon that allows us to just take this thing out from under the deep, the Republican Party in and of itself is an establishment apparatus. It isn't particularly conservative, much better than the Democrat Party, but the social media and these platforms is going to be the equalizing force. So we need folks that are willing to be social media captains at multiple levels. And if we can pull that together, we're going to win this thing, and we need help in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to give you, Lauren, the opportunity to ask any final things if you wanted to, ask Don anything or have any comments to him.
I'm just jogging through thinking about all the stuff he said. Today, I've been working with the staffers for Rish about the defund the Taliban bill, and that's been a mess. I mean, and I keep thinking like, okay, if I can get 60 Don Browns in the Senate, we can defund the Taliban bill, or get that through on the floor. So I just I guess what is your reaction to that? I mean, it's been sitting in foreign affairs since June, and it's been a big deal on social media the last couple of hours.
Yeah,
I guess that's just my last question.
and so, but you're asking the right questions to expose what questions. I had when I was a JAG officer, I had a commanding officer tell me, he said, Lieutenant Brown, I was lieutenant then, he said, the mark of a good lawyer isn't always the answers given, but rather the questions asked. Jesus himself was profound by asking questions. The most profound question, who do you say that I am? That forces us all to look at that question. You're asking the question, why is this Taliban defunding bill still sitting in committee? And as I say, we have weak Republican Congresses. We got to raise hell about stuff like this, and I'm willing to do that. It's ridiculous that these bills that are America First bills are getting bottlenecked by Republican leadership in both the House and the Senate. And that cannot happen. It simply cannot happen. Marjorie Taylor Greene just left the House, regardless of how you feel about her. There's one bill that I certainly agree with. I don't think that hyphenated Americans ought to be serving in the Congress. Why are those bills just sitting there? And even more importantly, why is it that we are counting illegals in the United States Census? And I will support a Citizenship Census Act, a fight to end that. Marjorie put one up, and it's sitting on the Speaker's desk. Why is it sitting on the Speaker's desk? I'm going to be raising hell about these things from the floor of the Senate. I will be unpopular amongst the Republicans there. Doesn't matter to me. They're pushing Whatley anyway. The National Senate, committee is pushing Whatley, and so I've got nothing to behold to any of them except I got to look at my face. And it was like Nathan Hill said, I only regret is I have one life that I can give for my country, and that's what I'm planning to do, no matter what. So you're raising the right questions. I'm going to be depending on all y'all when I go to the Senate. This isn't a one-time thing, but we are representatives, and therefore I'm going to be listening, and I'm going to do my best to keep, my finger on the temperature of the people. And one of the reasons Trump became so popular as quickly as he did is because he was speaking what people were thinking. And I intend to try to do just that and to act in that manner as well.
Yeah, music to my ears. Yes,
words right out of my head. Music to my ears too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what we want to hear. And so, again, I appreciate you coming in here tonight. I appreciate you talking with us. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to get your name out there too, because I think you're going to be a fantastic addition to the Senate. I just wanted to open the floor to you. Any final things that you want to say to people? We have about just under 2,000 live listeners, and we have some Democrats in there too that are making comments. So
Democrats can make comments all
yeah, whatever.
But the nation is going to go bankrupt. You're not going to get your social programs when that happens. We don't curtail spending. So
Right.
The nation is on the brink. On the 20th of January, 2029, there's going to be another president. Congress has got to step up and fulfill its constitutional responsibility. The main role of government is to protect individual liberty and to protect individual freedom, not to create a monolithic lollipop factory that is government, not to create agencies that make regulations to drive up the price of milk and meat and cheese and eggs and make it impossible for small farmers to operate. We have to, in the words of President Reagan, get the government off the backs of the people so that freedom can reign, and I intend to fight to do just that.
Well, I appreciate you coming in here tonight. If you're watching right now, please follow Don Brown for NC on X. Help him get out there. Help him get his name out there. Repost his stuff. Donate if you're able to, and really take a look at his what he's got to offer, because I think it's a lot, and I think your platform will resonate with a lot of conservatives. And so, everything that you said, I agree with. I believe that you will be the next senator in North Carolina, and I really hope that we can help you do that. I just that's what I want to do here. That's our objective. We want to put the good guys out there. We want to help you get your name out there, and that's what we're here to do. And that's what I'm going to use my 100,000 plus followers to help you guys do. And so I just thank you for coming in here tonight. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything that you're doing, because I know it's not easy. You didn't pick an easy route. It would be much easier to be a DoD contractor and make a lot of money and then, go live whatever. So like this is a tough route that you picked. And I know it's because of your sense of patriotic duty.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. God bless you all. Thanks for having me. Hope to see you all again soon.
All right. Appreciate you, Don. All right. Have a good night, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, my panel here. Well, what do you guys think?
I love him.
I like him.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not kidding. When I met him, he is so real. He's literally what we need. I'm so excited about it. And Jay, you have such a great platform, and I wanted to say that before, but I got distracted. You should do that again with him, somewhere down the line, because you are so well respected on all platforms. Please do that again with him. He needs to be seen. He is amazing, and he's not a lie. He's like, literally, that's him.
Well, if you're watching here, send it to your bigs, send it to your, send some of Don's posts to your bigs, help him get his name out there, because that's really how we do this. And we can help him out. It doesn't matter how big your account is or whatever. Like, we could, like, reposts, clicks, likes, comments, they all help his stuff get out there. And so that's where it starts. I started from 0 here on X, just over 3 years ago, and now 100,000 followers. So you can do it too. You can help them get out there. And this is how we save our country. We get the people that we want in there. We get the good ones in there, and we help promote them. So I just appreciate you two for coming in here. Lauren, do you got any final comments?
Yeah, it's easy. It's really easy for you to be like, I don't live in North Carolina. Like, what do I care? It's really easy to be like that, but you don't know, like, maybe you only have 100 followers. Maybe 15 of those are, or 5 of them even are North Carolina, and they're just people bouncing around, and you retweet it, and they'd never heard of Don Brown before. All they had heard was Watley or Tillis. They thought it was Tillis still, right? Like it's important that if you do repost that stuff, even though you're like, oh, it doesn't apply to my state, like, he didn't talk Idaho tonight, right? Like doesn't apply to my state, it's not significant. Well, I mean, my hope is that I have a couple of 100 followers out there who are in North Carolina, who do see the problem and understand, like, we've got a rhino problem, right? And you're looking at, like, the neocon, like, Bush establishment types trying to, like, they genuinely believe that they're coming back to power after Trump's gone. They think when Trump's gone, so is MAGA. They think America first and MAGA disappears when Trump disappears. And I think they are sorely mistaken. And I think, if anything, we need to get more people who, like, didn't kowtow under the J6 stuff, or like defend Biden when there was obvious election interference. Like, we need those members. And yeah, and he's obviously one of them, right? Like, he defended J6ers as a lawyer. So I think, like, those kinds of things are really important, and we need to be pushing those around. Like, if you inherently, like, he said something that I thought was really interesting too, which was he cares about the housing costs rising for the youth. And not many people will say that. Like, a lot of people will come, I mean, honestly, a lot of them come out and they're like, oh, well, we're worried about the housing cost increase, and we want to remove property tax because of, retirees or whatever. Like, he's one of the first candidates I've ever heard go like, no, I want it removed because of the youth. And that's exactly where we're going, right? Like, we need to be focused on our youth. The illegals have eaten up all of our subsidies and resources. You're paying for their schools, you're paying for their infrastructure, you're paying for their medical. Like, and he kind of addressed that, not necessarily like with illegals, but we're seeing that, and it's impacting our youth. We're replacing them with foreign labor. I think that to have somebody with that wherewithal at that level, who speaks that well, to go and sit in the Hill, in the Senate, is probably really, really important, right? Like, we don't have many of that. I mean, we could end up with a Crenshaw or a McCain, or you know what I mean? Like we can't let them take the reins again. Like that's over with. This foreign intervention, throw money around, foreign aid crap that we've been living this nightmare for decades, and we're done. Like it's over with. We're America first now. We're bringing it all home. We're kicking everybody out who doesn't need to be here, and we're gonna start building our youth, like giving them back their inheritance. So I will land my plane.
Yeah, no, they're our future. They're voters too, and so a lot of us are parents, grandparents, and we're seeing how hard it's going to be for them. And so we need our candidates to address that issue, because it is an issue that they won't be able to own a home. They won't be able to do all the same things that we were able to do because of the situation. Yeah. And we didn't really cause the situation. However, it's here. And so how do we deal with it? And so I'm glad that he was willing to address it too, because we need to recruit these young people. We need to get them on board with solving these issues. We need them to recognize how dire the situation is and how close we are to losing it at all. And so, yeah, exactly right, Lauren. So I wanted to thank you for coming in here tonight. Where can we find you, Lauren?
I am Roglu18 on X, but I am not. My thing says I'm Italian. We went through this. Because I spent a month in Italy in all of October, and I think that it's backdating. It's pinging your profile from a month ago. So I'm gonna have to wait for it to bleed off. But in the meanwhile, you can hear me tell a bunch of WAP jokes and express about how proud I am of my Italian heritage.
So you're not in Italy right now. It's funny because I made a joke about it the other day. I was like, hey, I'm turning on my VPN. Please don't unfollow me, because my VPN went to, I think it was the Netherlands or something like that. It automatically went to the Netherlands. I was like, great. Now I'm going to get blocked.
You're not Dutch?
Yeah, like I'm going to get just ridiculous. But, I'm here in Georgia. Trust me. That's the way it is. But yeah, I appreciate you
Dude, I
coming
had
in.
somebody call me a Somalian Italian yesterday. Like a Somalian? Oh, you're a Somalian Italian. I was like, I literally post pictures all the time. I'm always like on streams and stuff. Like people have seen me in the Capitol. I'm friends with all the legislators. Like, how could I be if I'm a Somali Italian? I mean, that was impressive. Like AI in real life, or like, I don't know what like you and I have met, like you and I have hung out in Idaho. So like, it's just crazy to me. Like people are they're nuts on X. Anyways, that's all.
This is the first Somalian Italian that I've met. Land, you two, where can we find you? Tell us where you're at.
Yeah, mostly on X, Land of Illusion 1. Yeah, there's a 1 there. Yeah, I'm just on X, and I'm at work. I'm at work and I'm on X.
Two both fantastic space hosts. You see them in spaces. Lauren does for Idaho Freedom Caucus, and Land of Illusion does late night spaces. Just fantastic people, fantastic American patriots. Follow them on X, and I appreciate y'all coming here and sporting tonight. Thank y'all.
We appreciate you. Lauren, you made some great points. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Yeah,
guys.
it's nice to meet you too. Bye. Thanks.
All right. There you have it. Don Brown from North Carolina. Follow him on X. Help him get his name out there. Help American First candidates, in their endeavors to win in 2026. It's so important. So I appreciate everybody coming in here tonight. Please say a prayer for our, the tragedy today in DC with the National Guard troops being attacked. Really troubling times. It just, this is something that a lot of us have been warning about. This is why a lot of us have been critical of, the DOJ and, trying to, get some of these legal things happening, because this rhetoric has gone on too long. The media, the Democrats and stuff like that, they've been, pushing their rhetoric, and it's making people crazy. It's making people act out in these ways. And, with the open border, with all these different things, it just compounds this issue. And so please say a prayer for our National Guard members. Hopefully, Pete Hegseth gets his wish and gets an additional 500 members of the National Guard in DC, because obviously it's needed. Obviously, the situation is not completely under control because we had 2 National Guard members attacked today. So pray for them, and hopefully we get the situation under control and justice is served, and we can, stop this from happening. So appreciate y'all coming tonight. Thank you for joining us. Please repost the live, and thank you for everybody coming and joining us tonight. Have a good night.